Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the very first episode of a Hangout of Witches. This is a That's Normal. If you've been with us for any length of time, we have done Boozy Book Club. We've done Harry Potter and the Totally Normal Hangout. We have Hangoutlander. We sit and we drink and we talk about our favorite books and TV and movies. And it is a super good time. And my name is Beth. And we're here to talk about A Discovery of Witches on TV because it was super good and we really liked it. And we were fans of the book when it first came out and we were vampire people. And it's just all goodness. We can't wait to sit and chat with you guys about it. I'm having a nice little Merlot and my grandmother's goblets and candy in a candy dish, so you don't hear me rummaging through the paper. I wore my Discovery of Witches blue shirt, my witchy ring, and I'm ready to get started. I'm so excited. Everybody say hello. Nikki, you start.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki. I'm thrilled to be talking about any TV show that is not called Outlander. And I'm so excited about A Discovery of Witches. Loved the book. Super loving the show. And I'm having some sparkling water because I'm going to go hang out with my niece and nephew after this. So I should probably not be trashed. So tweet us using a Hangout of Witches.
Yes, hashtag a Hangout of Witches.
I was about to say Hangoutlander. Use a Hangout of Witches or join us in the YouTube comments. That also works in the chat. And we will retweet and talk to you as well. Okay, Emily, introduce yourself.
I'm Emily, and I am drinking Perrier strawberry flavored. Just got home from work, and I'm super excited to talk about another witch named Emily, who I think is super badass, and I really loved the portrayal of her. So I know she's not our main character, but can't wait to talk a little bit more about her. So Gianna, take it away.
Hi, I'm Gianna. I'm finishing up a glass of rosé and then moving on to a Moscow Mule in a can made with real vodka, not just malt. So I'm excited about that. And I loved the first book. Not so much the second and third, but that's for another time. And yeah, I liked the show. I'm kind of in it was good, not great. I have a few issues I'm fired up about. So
yes, issue away. Guys, Jana just kind of started us off with the what is your connection to Discovery of Witches in the TV show? And here's mine. I read A Discovery of Witches when it very first came out, and it came out like right in the middle of the Twyfic era, which is
okay. Was it Twyfic?
Several years long. Twyfic is Twilight fan fiction. And I know that sounds ridiculous to people who don't know what that is, but it's fan fiction in the Twilight universe, which was gigantically popular. This was not like I started reading fan fiction with The Office on NBC.
Yeah.
That was nothing. Yes, it was wonderful. Nothing in comparison to the world of Twyfic. I mean, Twyfic is
many bestsellers from Twyfic.
Yes, literally. I think it was Oprah's magazine recently just came out with like the best romance novels of like whatever. I don't know what it was, but it was like a major list or whatever. And there were 3 or 4 people that had written Twyfic that were on there. I mean, they are the romance genre right now. And that's how they got their start. So it was a big, big deal. So when I read Discovery of Witches, it felt so much like some of the adult vampire-esque Twyfics, because some of them were all human and all that stuff. But the ones that were vampires, that were serious vampires, and they were adults, not teenagers, that's what it felt like. And so I liked it, but I didn't love it because I was in the middle of reading really amazing Twyfic, and I wanted like sex and more danger and just like a little bit more. I wanted my vampire to be Edward, basically. So
don't we all?
I liked it, but I didn't love it. And then when Shadow of Night came out, I couldn't get through it. And so I kind of put it to the side and didn't worry about it. And when the show was announced, I was like, oh, well, that's going to be cool. I hope it's good. Very cautious, very like cautiously optimistic. We interviewed Deborah Harkness at Comic-Con. She was amazing. We saw the pilot at the next Comic-Con. It was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally sold on this again. It was so good. And so I reread the first book, read the second book, and totally loved it. And I don't know how, I just wasn't in the right place the first time I read it, I think. And started the third one and haven't gotten through it yet. And I'm so stoked. I'm so into it right now. I kind of loved it. So that's my Discovery of Witches story. Nikki, tell me yours.
Mine's kind of similar. I didn't read it back in the day, but I remember a bunch of my friends, included, reading it and talking about it. And then this summer, when the news broke that they were going to make a show, I was like, oh, I got to read that book. So I hopped in right before Comic-Con, and I was reading while at Comic-Con, saw the panel, and that's maybe one of the first panels I've been to at Comic-Con where I was like, oh, I really like everyone on the stage, and I actually want to watch the show. And then they showed up. Did they show us the first episode, or was it just clips? I think it was just clips. They showed us clips,
but we saw the episode at New York Comic-Con.
Yeah, and it was so good. And at the interviews, everyone was so well-spoken. Deborah was not annoying. She was very cool. So here I am, enjoying it.
Emily, what's your Discovery of Witches connections? What's your story?
I downloaded the audiobook. Honestly, I think I checked out the audio CDs from the library and I ripped it to an old iPod, old, that still had the little spindly thing on it.
Wow.
And yeah. But when the TV show was announced, I was like, wait, I think that's the book I have on my old iPod. So I went and I found it and I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to it. And I listened to that. And then I found the other 2 audiobooks from Audible. And I was like, yep, downloaded those. And I devoured the 3 audiobooks within a matter of 2 weeks. And they take 24 to 27 hours each to read or listen to. And I did that in the space of 2 weeks. I was like, do not talk to me. Do that. It was on my Alexa. Oh shoot, she came on.
Oh no.
So that was while I was cleaning, while I was doing whatever it was. That is what I listened to. And I think the narrator, her name is Jennifer Ikeda, and she just had a way of bringing the characters to life. And I loved that. She's also read Sarah J. Maas books. She read all of those also. So I loved how her performance just brought those to life. And I think that's what did it. Whenever I had to drive to our other offices in San Diego, I was like, and on goes the audiobook. So, it was a 2-hour drive to San Diego or a 3-hour drive to, I had to drive to Fresno once. So
yeah, anytime a good narrator will sell an audiobook. And then of course the book itself very, very easily. That's a good performance. That's amazing.
So that's, I mean, getting through all 3 of those books, I just devoured them. And I was like, Mom, I'm sending you these for your birthday. I was like, Mother's Day, whatever. Here you go. You're getting all 3 of these books. And she's like, I love these books. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love sharing it with your mom.
Yeah. Somebody in the YouTube, Faith, just said she was introduced to it by That's Normal. She binged the show and she just started book 1. Nadine just said she was bored with Outlander and it was recommended by the same friend. So that worked out well. And Vodwa Brubaker said a good friend and I made a deal that she would read the Fever series if I read A Discovery of Riches right before the 3rd book was released, and she was hooked immediately. Those are all super great
That's a good trade-off.
It is, especially because Fever, you can get through Fever a lot easier than you can get through these. But so then that way it's not as much of a trade-off, but still great. Introduced me to Barons, introduced me to Matthew, and I'm a happy girl. Oh, Barons.
Barons.
JZB.
We have a funny tweet from Shy Sports Girl, Stephanie. She says, we're preempting the State of the Union address tonight. So I'm pretty sure this is better than whatever's happening.
Forget that trash.
Right.
You'd rather 100%. Be here.
Also, Stacey Abrams, who's delivering the Democratic response to the State of the Union, used to write romance novels, guys. Look it up.
Oh,
yes, she has a pseudonym, wrote some romance novels. Go check them out. I think that's awesome.
We should make them part of the next That's Normal Boozy
That's
Book
a
Club.
good idea.
We absolutely should.
That's a great idea.
I know. Let's get into it. We have 10 minutes of introduction. Did you have something else to say?
Well,
Nikki?
I was going to say, Jana, how did you find the books?
My sister-in-law read them, recommended them to me a couple years. It's probably been about 2 years. So I blazed through them really quickly. Really liked the first one. But maybe, like Beth, I need to try rereading 2 and 3 because they were long and
It was
boring and a bit pretentious. So
Yeah.
I think they're really hard to get through.
28 hours.
Yeah. As soon as like the whole first part of Shadow of Night's really difficult because there's like all these famous people walking in and you're like, oh goodness gracious, are they Jamie and Claire Fraser? What's going on? But reading it the second time, I really wanted to know what was going to happen because of the show. So I was way more invested in where they were going to go, what was going on. So that's one good, tick for an adaptation, making me care about the books better. I don't think that's ever happened, really. I can't think of another time that happened to me. So let's talk about why the show is interesting and why it's such a good adaptation. I think it starts from scene 1 where start out with Matthew on that bridge and narrating the whole thing that comes up, every episode, with demons, witches, we're ill at ease with each other and everything. And I think that all that bit of Matthew, even at the beginning, keeps us interested in why he's there, who he is, whether, what's going on. And then they show him in a church later on. We haven't even heard from him and he's just standing there praying. And there's just a little bit, all of the ways in which they keep going back to other characters and showing us someone different and not keeping us specifically in Diana's perspective, really helps heighten the mystery and even heighten the stakes later on. So what did you guys think of that aspect of like adaptation?
I liked that it started off with Matthew, with his little monologue. I didn't like that each episode started with his voiceover. Like that felt a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
But I mean, like instantly you kind of have this spooky, like, why is he watching her? What's going on? So I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Good intro.
Like, is he a witch? It's a discovery of witches. I don't even know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that they throw her right in and you get to see her like biking around Oxford, Cambridge. I don't know where we're at. Oxford. And she's like at the Bodleian. Bodleian, am I saying that right?
Bodleian.
Bodleian.
Audio book
I've said it about every time. Bodleian?
Yeah.
Okay. She's tooling around the Bodleian. I could have like lived in that little world for a little longer than they gave us.
Forever.
Yeah. I love it in the book, so I really like seeing it on screen. I needed just a few more minutes, but I love that they just like threw us into the action. There wasn't any time to just like rest and get used to it. So I like the pacing.
The aesthetics are gorgeous. Like, and every place that they go, the aesthetics are amazing. Like even when they like flash to Madison, you're like, oh my gosh, is that a Norman Rockwell postcard? Like, do I get to go live there? And like, you want to live in Oxford, you want to live at Septour, you want to live in Venice. It all looks amazing.
So obviously they can't film in the Bodleian Library. Did you guys see on Facebook when they posted how they built the set for the Bodleian Library? I was just so fascinated by how they built the library to spec.
Set designers deserve like way more awards and recognition. That was beautiful. It looks incredibly real, obviously. And everything about it, like the little chutes that went down and they like so they could get the call papers. I mean, it was all very cool.
Yeah. And just like it's such a mood. You know what I mean? Like autumn equinox, like in the Oxford Bodleian Library, like with your tweed and your sweater vests and all of that stuff. Like you just feel immediately in this academic aesthetic that's just kind of wrapping you up in a warm blanket, and you fully believe that like there are British witches after you. I mean, it's just, it's such a thing. It's like this whole mood that I fully believe the whole time.
And like you could smell the old books. Like I feel like you could smell the age on every one of those books that was there.
Right. When
There's
she like
this-
touched Ashmole and all that dust got on her hand, you just felt
Yes.
like tactile, like how that feels. Yeah.
There's this moment too where Matthew sniffs the book, the notes and queries that she pulls down, and he like smells it. And I'm like, is he smelling her? Because she didn't touch it yet. No, he's just smelling that book just for the heck of it. Like that's so dorky and lovely.
I made a note that I desperately want that lady's job in the basement who just like gets the notes and collects the books. I'm like, I just want to sit in a basement and drink tea and work on my novel and send old books up a dumbwaiter. Like, is that a career?
It might be.
And
Yeah.
how do
yeah.
I make it happen?
Yeah.
Because that looks
there's
like the life.
Another book that I read where the whole thing, there's this whole big parts of it that take place in an old library like that. I think it's The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. But the whole idea of like that being your job, like you're the fetcher of these books and these like major collections or whatever is so freaking cool. Who wouldn't want to do that? That's so awesome. My husband was watching with me today. He stayed home from work today and was watching it, and he loved it, by the way. He would do a Blurtlander all over Discovery of Witches. But he was like, those shelves don't match those books. Those books are like really nice and old. Those shelves are just like so utilitarian. I was like, well, it's downstairs in a basement where nobody sees it. He didn't get that. Like he didn't know what was going on. So anyway, I love it. Somebody else did say that they agree with you about Matthew, the voiceover at the beginning of every episode. And I was annoyed with it too, like especially towards the later episodes. But then like I watched the third episode again today, and each time he does it, you almost get like a little bit more information. Like it's saying the same thing and it's the same voiceover. He never re-recorded it or anything. But like in the third episode, it shows him, I think, heading to Hamish's house, and then it shows him talking to Hamish, and then Hamish is like, oh, nobody would believe like a vampire and a demon are such close friends or whatever. And so it almost like reminds you, it's kind of a reopening of each relationship as the episode kind of goes on. And then in episode 4, you're going to have like Septour with Isabeau meeting Diana. And so that voiceover has like a little bit of like purpose to it, even though it does get redundant when you binge watching it. But I think if you don't binge watch it, it's not as annoying.
Right. I think that like that brings up like a really good point. And we talked about it last week in or the week before in our after Hangout Lander session about like the subtleness, the little things that come out. When I was rewatching the scene today where she calls up Ashmole and she opens it, and kind of everyone in the room has this like moment, and they cut to Matthew and you hear his heart thump once. And I was like, oh, I didn't catch that at all the first time. And then they go back, I went back and was like, oh my God, so subtle, but like really powerful. So,
yeah,
I
there are
love
a lot
the
of
subtle
moments.
details.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments like that where he's like barely growling, but that's when he's being like the most protective of her. And it's like so awesome. Or there's, the soundtrack that you're hearing in the background is her heartbeat or the blood rushing through her veins. And it's just like stuff that you don't notice when you're just like watching it to get to what's going to come next. But if you watch it again, you're like, oh my goodness, like we're sitting just listening to him hear her heart. And it's really, that kind of stuff is super cool in this show. Nadine just said subtlety is why the adaptation works. And I think that's 100% true. Like they don't beat you over the head, even though there's a ton of imagery and lore and a lot of stuff, world building that goes on in these books. They are in no way beating you over the head with it. They give it to you in like subtle bits. And it's why it makes it such a good like rewatch as well, because you get to go back and feast on some of that stuff. Also, related, they quietly introduce people, like characters on the show. So like Sylvia, for instance, who's like the coven head of Oxford. All they do is have Jillian mention her and then go see her. And when she goes to see her, she says that disturbance we all felt. So you immediately know that Sylvia is also a witch. Like they didn't have to like introduce her in this big way. Or when they introduced
or
Juliet.
do voiceover.
Right.
And Sylvia was a demon.
And Diana doesn't have to have like a conversation with Sylvia to figure out who she is. She's introduced naturally through the characters that know her. And there's a moment too, like the way Juliet is introduced, that's a big moment. Those are big scenes where she's stalking this guy around Venice.
That was such a good opening. Such good episode. I mean, I kind of had like Twilight Eclipse flashbacks.
Right.
Of Riley getting stalked through the streets of wherever.
Yeah.
But such a good scene.
Yeah.
I love that they're bringing characters that don't happen until later in the book up into the story, and you're learning about them in a totally different timeline. Well, I guess a congruent timeline, but learning their story and how they'll eventually play into like larger story. I really appreciated that.
Right.
I loved Marcus's introduction too, right? The way they introduced Marcus. Marcus is the first vampire we see.
Right. And he actually, is that when he actually tries to save the friend and they figure out some of the stuff isn't working?
Right.
Yeah. I liked how it was different than the book, but you were able to see certain things. I mean, you find out Peter Knox in a very different way. You find out Juliet and Gerbert in a very different way. Now Domenico is the other one when he walks into the morgue in Venice. And at first I was like, okay, but I'm not placing who this is because I can't remember where this happened in the book, but it happened in such an effective way that I was like, oh, all of this makes so much more sense now. And it conveyed so much more in such a more condensed and more useful amount of time. And I really, how they got everybody introduced more quickly was useful.
Right. So, and I think you bring up a really good point, like using time efficiently and wisely. Like they only have 8 episodes, so it's super fast paced. We're going to talk about the later episodes in a later hangout, but just getting straight to the point and starting to bring these people in earlier, being much more succinct and like using an editing eye is like, I think one of the reasons I'm really enjoying the show. Yeah. Like they don't need 16 episodes. They don't need 13. Maybe one more would have been nice, you know, just for the fluff of it. But
the only downside for me, like I love they introduced all those other storylines earlier, but it really, like most of the first half of the first book, I think is just Matthew and Diana and like their slow burn romance. And you really do lose that in the show. Like it progresses very quickly.
Yeah, it does.
It's a little hard to buy, but I mean, when you see like, it does make sense. It's a shame if you haven't read the book because you're like, where is this romance coming from?
Why is she saying I love you in episode 4?
Right?
What?
It does feel fast, but again, you feel like it's maybe that's part of it. Like the fact that they're so drawn to each other or whatever is part of why it's like, what? Where is this coming from? Why do you like each other?
There's some like magical influence there, but I was like, oh, that was quick. Like if you wouldn't have known why they had to make those changes, it would have seemed unnaturally insta-love.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, like it was a good choice to bring all those other characters in.
Yeah.
When Marcus came into the lab, it was, if I hadn't have read the books, I would have been unclear that he and Miriam knew each other because it seemed so odd, their relationship. And I felt that it took me a second to go, okay, are they playing it that they know each other or do they not know each other? Even though having read the book, you know that they know each other, but it just seemed so odd how they played it. That was a little stiff, that relationship for me.
Miriam and Marcus?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Very antagonistic.
And I don't remember, does the book say why there's kind of that hostility there? I don't remember.
There's a story about her, and I'm blanking on what it was, but it's like revealed at the end, I think. She's like the oldest of all of them, I believe. Yeah.
I know she lost her mate. Her mate died, and I don't know if Marcus maybe had something to do with that, or...
I mean, I read the 4th book that's not even in this that has to do more with Marcus, and it was not the greatest book, so I won't get into it, but they become very close, so I don't know, it's just weird, and I didn't feel that there should have been as much animosity between them on the screen as I felt, but
I guess because they're the only vampires that we get introduced to right away with Matthew. And so they help kind of establish him as the linchpin of that little triad.
Right.
maybe without Matthew, they wouldn't be in any way working together. He doesn't have a blood sample in her lab, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I guess maybe if their camaraderie was a little bit better, it would feel like, well, you know, what does Matthew have to do with these two people? And I think it just shows him kind of as the leader of that little group, because they're the only vampires we've been introduced to at all at that point. One thing that I felt was interesting, even in the very first episode, with the way the subtlety and the way that it's so fast paced, that it's one of the reasons I believe the romance with them so fast. It was one of my favorite scenes in the very first episodes after they've met in the Bodleian, which I guess people think is like the best one. But their best scene, I think, in that first episode is in the cafe. She's looking him up. And he walks in and sees that she's looking him up and Googling him. And she, at the same time, you can see Teresa Palmer like stiffen, feeling, and you know, like if you've read the books, you know she's feeling his gaze on her. And so they almost simultaneously like are aware of each other. And then they come around and have that conversation. And my favorite line, and this is down to Matthew Good being awesome, and I'm sure being like well directed by the amazing women that directed this show. But like when she says, "Is that a threat?" when he tells her that she needs to be careful, he goes, "No, no, it's a warning." Like that delivery sells you on the fact that Matthew is not out to get her. Like that's because that line, "Is it a threat?" "No, it's a warning." That's kind of tropey. It's a pretty cliche line. And just his delivery just like sold me on, oh no, he's here for her. Like he wants to help her out, regardless of having any knowledge of the book or anything prior. I was like, oh, I love them already. I love that scene.
And considering her probably entire knowledge of vampires would be negative, being a witch, it like totally helps seal it for her too. Like, oh, maybe this guy isn't, you know, a terrible bloodsucker who follows me around when I'm rowing.
She even seems shocked that he's stalking her. She's like, "Are you stalking
Why?
me? Is that really happening? Like, I thought you were chill." Like it's, I love that scene in the row house too. Because he is stalking her. And he does seem more menacing in that one, but it's with good reason. And I love the way that it ends. I love him like telling her to walk past him slowly. I had to explain to my husband what was going on.
I thought that was so cheesy.
Oh, shut up.
It did not work for me.
So cheesy.
Really?
The whole like
snarl,
sniffing and like his like flary nostrils. I was like, ugh.
Okay. You have to consider, and I've considered, trust me, Robert Pattinson as Edward doing his growl face at the boys in Port Angeles. Okay? Please just consider how much worse this vampire face could be. And how hard it must be to convey the possessiveness, the like animal nature of a vampire who's craving the blood of somebody else, like with sniffs and growls when you're a human. And when you're Matthew Good, who probably is giggling through the whole thing, he's like a giggle monster. So I love the idea that all of a sudden he is aware of her as a warm blood, basically, and not just somebody that he's after like for help or for like academic purposes or for this book or whatever. All of a sudden he's sparked with like the need to chase her, to see her
craving. He craves her.
I like it. Shut up.
He wants her blood.
Heroin.
Like I said, so many Twilight flashbacks.
Yeah.
Oh, there were times where I was like yelling at the TV, or when I was reading, I was like, "How long have you been 17? A while?" I still love it. I think we have to talk about, because it keeps getting brought up in Twitter by Katie and Jamie and me also. Some of the FX were also very Twilight reminiscent in the fact that they were terrible. Like him chasing after the so deer, bad. Like later, some of the stuff that happens, like, oh my gosh. Like I realize it's a TV show, some of the budgets aren't going to be there, but holy shit, like find a different way to convey some of that.
I thought the running was better than it is in Twilight because they didn't show him running for long at all.
Yeah, I think they needed to do what they ended up doing in New Moon, which is where they just show it in slow-mo so you feel like it's faster.
Yeah,
and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, it's still funny to watch. Especially the flying in later episodes. That's literally like I was laughing out loud.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that yet. We're sticking with the first 2 episodes for now. I don't want to get into the stuff I didn't like about those. And I haven't rewatched them yet.
I had a quick question about back to the coat sniffing scene. At the end of that scene where she turns and like looks around, what is she doing? Is she like challenging his order? Like, why does she turn around and she kind of has this awestruck look on her face? I didn't get that.
I think they wanted to end on her and not on him, and didn't really have a good way to do it without her looking fearful. I don't think that they wanted to end on her like being like looking scared, and so they give us nothing. Like she turns. I mean, I'm assuming that she turns and he's no longer there. They didn't give us that because they don't want the end of it to be an empty alleyway or wherever they are, empty, you know, Riverside. But I mean, I can't, there's nothing for her to see. I don't think he's there anymore. Maybe she gets to see him jumping really high away or something to get away from her, but they didn't have the budget to do that effect. I don't know.
They spent too much money on the deer.
I don't understand why the deer bows for him.
Because they recognize him as like the alpha. Like he has run this deer to the
king of the moors.
Deers is king of the moors. He's
king of the moors.
Chase him until he's so tired that the deer is just giving up. I think that's kind of how they say it in the book, that the animal is giving up.
Like I get that maybe it would submit to him as like a higher predator, but it looked like it was bowing to him, and instead of just like collapsing and like, you ran me out, I'm done. Like,
right. It felt very Lion King. We present to you Simba and all the animals.
If Simba was going to eat all of the antelope at that particular moment. But yeah, that's a weird scene. How expensive is it to film in Venice? I feel like Elise brought this up a couple of weeks ago on Hangout Lander, that it was like an expensive shoot, like it's an expensive place to shoot.
Right. I bet they used a lot of like stock and then, you know, just very quick exterior type stuff to get those like.
No, there are times when they're in boats, like they're on little boat taxis.
Yeah. I wonder how it is filming on boats. Maybe
that has to be super expensive. Can you imagine like the amount of like equipment that you have to bring in on a boat to film in Venice? That's crazy to me. Anyway. I think it works. It's beautiful. I'm glad they did.
Yeah. The whole show is gorgeous. Makes you want to take like a vacation over there.
It 100% makes you want to take a vacation.
So I know we're not there, but Septour is a B&B that you can rent places in. I looked it up.
Shut up!
Oh, TNCon. Is it
next week on a discovery of Witches Hangout?
I looked it up. It is a real place you can actually visit.
Is it in France?
It's in France.
Wow. Holy shit. Let's do it.
I'll find it.
If we get like 30 of us to pitch in, I would be there.
Can we just
so much baguettes and cheese and wine.
And sheep. I feel like they eat a lot of sheep there.
Let's do it.
I'm okay with talking about Septours a little bit. I do want to like stick to the first 2 if we can. So, what do we think about gosh, is the guy's name Jabert?
Yes,
like
I love that they brought him in earlier.
Yeah. He's creepy as hell.
They definitely establish him as like a mega villain that you don't see in the book, like to that extent. The first book.
Yeah. And will help to understand like what's coming on later. And that's the other thing why the adaptation felt so well paced, is because when the very last episodes happen and things start like picking up, that would make no sense if we hadn't been introduced to any of these people ahead of time. And some of their menace and some of the reasons that they do some of the things that they do.
Yeah. And his head in a box, that shit was creepy.
That was so creepy.
Oh.
Yeah, my husband was asking, he's like, what is that? Why does he got a talking head? And I was like, let me tell you.
And that was all the stuff I didn't remember. Like, all I remember from the book was Diana and Matthew and alchemy. Like, I didn't remember anything about the group.
Congregation.
I didn't remember anything about that. Like, Gerbert, Juliet. Like, it all came back very quickly.
That too.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, all this other stuff happens.
Yeah.
It was good.
I didn't remember. I remember the witch water, witch wind, but I didn't remember any of the other stuff. It's crazy. I want to talk about Louise Brealey really quick. She's the one who is Gillian Chamberlain, and she plays a huge role in the first few episodes, and she is fantastic. Like, this cast, especially the supporting characters, are like top notch. They're so amazing. She is so nervous. She's like a little rabbit the whole time. Like, she can barely pour tea. She's so nervous. I'm like, she is such a good actress. I love watching her.
Great.
It reminded me a lot of her Sherlock character.
Yes, that's
Kind
where
of
she's
like
from.
that,
Thank
like
you.
that nervous energy, kind of. But yeah, she was so good.
Yeah, but
And-
you can see the menace underneath too. She's great. Like, it's really good. It's a really good performance.
And the guy who plays Peter Knox.
Yeah.
The
Teal.
Knight Commander.
Yes,
That's all I think of. I'm like, it's Alistair? Well, I don't know.
It's Alistair Thorne.
Alistair Thorne.
Yeah.
Yes,
Related to you, Beth.
Yes, absolutely. Me and Sally Thorne. But yeah,
He's
he's
insane.
great.
The girl who plays Juliet was in a Harry Potter movie.
yes,
Really?
Yes, she's
She's the waitress.
She's the waitress when she's like, "Who's that tosser, Harry Potter?"
Wow.
Like
That's
that's
saucy.
really all she's done, other than some like other BBC things.
That's a
she's
deep dive right
gorgeous. Like,
Yeah.
unfairly gorgeous.
there.
Yeah.
I know that Emily wanted to talk about Alex Kingston, and I have to say really quickly before you do, she's perfect for this role. That's all. That's all I want to say. Like, she's 100% exactly how I pictured Sarah. She plays her exactly how I pictured her playing Sarah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Sarah and Em are like need their own show. Like, I just want to like live in that homestead and the farm and take some lessons.
Nadine just said she thinks that Sarah was a little heavy-handed. No, I don't think she's heavy-handed. I think she's perfect.
I think she's perfect.
I think she's like that in the book too, like very just brusque and in your face. And Emily is kind of like the softer, more compassionate. So they balance each other out real well. I hadn't remembered that about Sarah. And I was like, oh yeah. She was kind of a bit much. But Alex Kingston does agree.
Hamish isn't until 3, right?
He's in the second.
He was in the second one.
episode.
What do we think of Hamish?
I like him. What
confused.
else is he in? He's in some other.
I wish they would have told us
too.
more about demons. Like, I don't remember what their powers are. Like, why are they all committing suicide? Like, why are they third-class citizens? I wish that had been explained a little bit more.
Well, part of that's supposed to be a mystery, right? Like, that's kind of the whole thing, is you don't really know till like the end of the third book what's going on with the demons.
Then tell us it's a mystery. Make it look like it's on purpose.
And they did, though. Then the whole second episode, he's like, we don't know what's going on with us. Like, so many of us are not making it. And he's telling Matthew that. And then those two demons, Sophie and Nat, are talking about it too. So they are talking about it.
I'll need to, because they were in the second episode, were they?
They are.
Were they? Oh, I didn't see that.
And they introduced is it the figurine, or she just introduced that she's been dreaming about Diana?
Yeah, they introduced the figurine, but that might be the third episode.
Yeah, because I just rewatched the second one, and I'm not sure they were in it.
Yeah, it may be the third. I just rewatched the third, and I knew I shouldn't have. I knew I should have stopped at the 2, or I would have gotten them mixed up. But Hamish does talk about like how the demons feel lesser, how they feel like a third-class citizen. I think that's what he says. And he's like, yeah, I have it okay. You know, because Matthew mentioned something about like him running London or whatever. He's like, yeah, I have it okay, but I'm an anomaly. Like, the majority of us aren't doing this well. So, you know, what are you going to do to help us out with that if you're going to go crazy with this book of life or whatever? I was confused by Hamish. I mean, I think he's supposed to be eccentric, and that's why he's wearing like knickers or breeches or whatever, like tweed breeches, and he's got like this house that he's redecorating all the time, but like he feels very normal to me. And I assumed that, like in my mind, I think the first time I read the book, maybe I wasn't paying attention very closely, I thought of Hamish as being like a big, burly Scotsman out on the moor, like, you know, with like rope hanging around his house or something, like just this like, you know, mead drinking, like half Viking, weird demon guy. And that's probably a totally incorrect picture. But in my mind, the demons were, you know, they're kind of crazy and they're unpredictable and they're spontaneous. And he was this Scottish demon that Matthew was friends with. And I just assumed he was more like wily. And this guy seems like
down to earth.
Just like a regular old country gentleman, you know, and it just felt a little weird to me.
I thought he would be long and lanky, and they describe him as a gay man. So I thought he was going to be very stylish and lanky and kind of just devilish from how they explain the character. But this guy works. Yeah. He has an interesting face.
He was very good. Yeah. I mean, when he's telling Matthew not to go back, he's like, look, you know, you told me to be your conscience. And that scene was great. It's really hard to talk about shows that I really like, guys.
I loved his Yoda line. It's like, Matthew's like, I'll try. He's like, don't try. Right. Do.
Yeah. So Faith on the YouTube channel just said she was very amused by the vampire yoga in the books. And Dawn said, I'm so glad we didn't get vampire yoga. And
thank God.
I'm so glad
I put that on my list. Yoga. Where's the yoga?
It's just so extraneous. It's so
cheesy.
Oh.
I would have died laughing.
Was extraneous, but I did like the yoga teacher person.
I think it would have been interesting to see all of these creatures in the same room. Did I need to see them doing down dog? No.
Right.
But, you know.
So
a little bit more of their courtship, you know.
Later on in the show, like you see them driving up. It ends up like they're driving up to Woodstock, like his old manor. But at first I thought they were driving up to yoga. And I was like, no.
I know. I was cute.
I was like, whew, just Woodstock. We're fine.
Yeah, he's like, do you want to hang out with me today? And I'm like, don't take your yoga. She's
wearing
a sweater.
Yeah, now if this would have been like an Outlander episode, there would have like shot to the end after the episode and like Matt and Mara would have been like, the yoga episode was, or the yoga moment was really something we couldn't cut. It was super important. No, it's not.
We'd all been like, you didn't need 45 minutes of yoga, you dumbasses. But that is one of the reasons that I feel like the courtship feels shortened or truncated, because it is extended in the book, because it starts out with that. And then there's all this toast that they're eating and shit. So there's like more going on. Does she cook for him in this third episode or the second episode? Is that the second episode?
It must be the third. It's not the second.
Third.
Okay. We'll talk about that.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very glad that they didn't do yoga. It's one of the good things. And it's one of the things that's the memorable thing from the book. That's one of the things you remember having read it. And for the fact that it's gone is a plus, not a minus. I mean, I don't know anybody that's been like, I miss it.
And that's how you adapt a TV show, Outlander.
Take notes. Take notes, Outlander. So we haven't talked about Teresa Palmer. She's the star of the show. She's the blonde Kristen Stewart. We love her from Warm Bodies. And what do we think? I believe that she is beautiful. She's very good. I really believe like she does some of the best like nonverbal acting in the show. And the only thing that bothers me is occasionally you could see her kind of like not being Australian. And it's obvious at times. I feel bad for her. I always feel bad for people who have to do an entire show, entire character in a different accent.
Right.
So Teresa / Diana was actually my big hang up on the show. I think the character of Diana is terrible. And I don't remember enough from the book, but like they give her nothing to do. Like, this is basically the Matthew show. Like, she goes to the library and she rows and she has nightmares, but she feels so passive, and they give her garbage dialogue. Like, she's either stating the obvious or asking really simple questions like, are you stalking me? Why are you following me? So, and like, her delivery can be a little wooden at times, but again, like, part of it is just the dialogue she's given, and she's given very little. Like, when you compare it to the other characters, they do so much exposition and explaining and questions, and she's not given any of that. So I think they really did that character a huge injustice, because she has almost no agency, it feels like.
Right.
And
I feel like sorry.
Oh, I found this amazing quote from another review, and it says,
Jana has notes, let her be.
I have notes. I have done research.
I'm waiting. Go.
So another reviewer said, Diana has no voice, and she's barely a character other than staring at Matthew, first in terror, then in curiosity, and then in boundless love. And it's true. Like, she mostly just stares at Matthew.
Does she, though?
I feel like she does. I feel, and like, I read that and then I rewatched the episodes today. I was like, wow, they really don't give her much to do to forward the story when you compare like what all the other characters are doing. And all the stuff she does do is like on accident. Like,
do you feel the same way about her in the book, the character, or just the TV version?
Because I feel like they focused more on like her alchemy and her work. So she came across in the book as far more intelligent and had more action. So it's just in the TV show, I feel like.
I could see what you're saying. I think they need to show that she doesn't know anything about magic. She doesn't really know much about the world of creatures. And this might be kind of like the easy way of doing that, of her like, oh, what is that, a warning? Is that like, who are you? You know, she has to ask those questions to look a little bit ignorant of her situation. That's my only like rebuttal to that. I do wish she was a little bit more charismatic. I think you're right. Yeah. There are some wooden moments. I think it does get better, but maybe I'm like thinking about the book Diana when I watch it. I don't know.
So Dawn and Andrea in the YouTube chat, Andrea said that she has skeleton syndrome, I guess, in some of her wooden delivery. Dawn said Diana's a total Mary Sue. And Andrea said she's the youngest, most brilliant researcher and the most powerful witch, which, yes, that makes her a bit of a Mary Sue. And Andrea said it lacks complexity a bit. It does in terms of Diana's journey. It is very basic. And I think the book feels a little bit like it's gotten more because it's fully from her perspective. So you're fully getting everything she's thinking and what she's going through. And in the show, you're just watching her look at these ancient books and you don't know whether or not she's thinking smart things about them or not. So as much as I appreciate the fact that they didn't feel the need to push her point of view down our throat, it does lend itself to her not being the character with the most agency so far. But there are moments where she does bite back, you know, even if they're simple, and even if they're not all of them are magic adjacent. You know, when Peter Knox grabs her arm and it's over the table and is like, you know, you need to get this book out. She's like, let go of my arm. And then she leaves. And when Matthew's opening the door for her, she's like, I can get my own door. Thanks. Like, she's got these moments of where she is taking charge of her own life in certain ways. It is underscored by the fact that she's constantly saying, I don't like magic. I don't do magic. And I don't know anything about anything and all of that kind of stuff. And it is underscored by that, but I don't think that she stays that way. And then in the books, even in the second book, she's constantly like doing magic and then going to sleep for 3 days. Like, that's her whole thing, is like doing something that stresses her out or overwhelms her. And then her just like, you know, dying for a couple of days and having to be revived eventually. So that is kind of her shtick. It doesn't last in the show, but I do see how it's frustrating.
And I did feel, not to spoil other episodes, but I did feel like it lasted. Like, as it kept going on, it felt like so much was just happening to Diana and she wasn't stepping out on her own or forging her own destiny. Like, things just kept happening to her and she just had to react to it. That's all. Like, she was just reacting.
Yeah.
Remind me, what episode did she go to the party where she was then introduced to Peter Knox?
Second.
So that was
episode
2. So she did do like she blasted him out of her mind.
Right. So that, I mean, because I felt that was a very, she took control of that situation, and she was there on her own, and like it was that I felt was a very her point of view, her thing, and not, Peter Knox was trying to be, take control of her, and Matthew was nowhere near there. So
yeah. And she goes and confronts Jillian. She's like, what, I can't believe you did this to me. You said, and she's not just letting everybody come into her life and change the way her life is, other than Matthew. Everybody else who kind of is imposing, she'll hang up on her aunts. Like, she's not, even though she calls them for advice, she's not like resting on their opinion or their, requirements of her as being, the Bible of what she has to do. She's like, screw y'all, I'll deal with it myself. Matthew's really the only one that she lets kind of take her away from her responsibilities or take her away from her own actions. She's ready to like go get the book herself. And that's when the witch wind comes calling and all of that kind of stuff. And I think there is agency there. You just have to squint to see it. And that's just part and parcel with the way that her character was written in the book. There wasn't really a whole lot of ways for them to get around the fact that she is a witch who doesn't use her magic. That's
she doesn't
hugely
know
important.
Anything.
Right.
Yeah. And it wasn't a complaint with the show, because I realized I'm like, oh, like, I mean, that's how the book is written. Like, all this stuff is from the book. It's just, and maybe that's why I didn't like the second and third book so much, because she spends so much time just not able to figure her magic out, and constant failure, and everyone else is kind of pushing things forward and making things happen.
Yeah. I think because once she's supposed to figure it out, everything becomes doable. You know what I mean? Like, she becomes capable of doing whatever it is she needs to do. And so she has to be resistant or lazy or procrastinating or, incapable in some ways, because once she does know, that's it. The story's over.
Yeah. I mean, it's her hero's journey. That's right. What she has to struggle with.
It's just taking a long time.
Yeah, you can look at it as kind of like the archetype of like innocence to wisdom. She doesn't know anything, and then she has to learn everything.
Yeah.
So that can smack of non-agency. But I think her, even though her having like, I'm the youngest, whatever, and I have all these books and like all that nonsense, I think it shows, at least in the book, that she's a really smart person. It would be great if they could figure out a way without doing narration or something annoying to show that a little bit more in the show.
Yeah, just to make her, even like her dialogue a little more intelligent. Because
it could be boosted a little bit.
It's not the impression I was getting from her when I know that character is super smart.
Right. It's a good point.
Yeah.
But I have met people with PhDs who cannot articulate anything. They're great. They just are not articulate.
Not everybody is a communicator. Some people are smart in other ways. I learned that today with some of my clients. Please let me send the emails for you. That's all I have to say. Let me write your emails. Nadine just said she's a Yale professor with tenure. In fact, I read Deborah Harkness saying that's one of the ways that you can tell it's a fantasy novels, because there's a 30-year-old woman with tenure at Yale.
She's funny, Deborah.
She is funny. Did I say Diana? I meant Deborah.
Well, whatever. I said it too. And then it's confusing because the character is Diana.
I know. I can't handle it. It's too many. Which is important. Her name is important. It's dadgummit. It's a lot going on. So anything else that you guys had in your notes or that you wanted to chat about these first 2 episodes before we say sayonara to everybody?
I had a technical question.
Let's hear it.
Why do you row backwards? And how do you not run into things? Like, does she have
a sports question?
Does she have a little rear view mirror attached? It just seems so dumb that you're in this river and you don't know what's behind you.
Some rower needs to tell us, because I know when it's in team rowing, there's someone turned the other way forward,
Right,
and everyone else is
your
backwards.
coxswain that is facing the other way. I lived in Boston and I watched rowing because somebody's like, let's go watch the rowing. And it was like Harvard versus Yale. And so we went. But yeah, there are people who go row and they just know everybody pays attention to everybody else. So
I guess you have lanes. I mean, when you're swimming, you can't necessarily see what's going on, but I think that I think you have lanes. And so she has this whole lane. She knows that she's free to do what she's doing. I don't know. But also, specifically, that's a technical question for like real rowers. But Diana has preternatural senses that she's using that she doesn't know she's using, which is why she's capable of rowing at fast speeds without looking. That's part of that.
Which we discover later.
Yeah, that was a spoiler.
Oops.
All right. So, guys, Hangout of Witches.
Yay.
Come to its first end. Yay.
Woo,
I think it was a rousing success.
Good job, Coven. So you guys, we haven't decided 100% how we're going to schedule these. Next Tuesday is Valentine's Day. We will probably do this in 2 weeks and do the next 2 episodes. You guys are good, like kind of ballast for us to understand like how you want to keep going. So let us know, tweet us, or talk to us on the Facebook group and let us know how you'd like to continue. And we will continue with the Discovery of Witches chat. We've loved it so much. I'm probably going to have to go watch the whole rest of the season with Ryan because he was mad that I stopped. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys loved the show, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
bye.